Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany Harelik and welcome back to the podcast. This is so fun because we have been recording these podcasts as live sessions lately. So some of you are able to join live on the YouTube channel, on Facebook, on Instagram. So welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're here during the live recording, please put any of your questions in the chat box and I will make sure that we get our special guest to answer them before the time is over. And if you're catching this later on the podcast on Audible, thank you, or audio, thank you for being here so much. If you're new, if you're old, welcome, welcome. I have a very special friend and colleague with us today, Lisa Gianini. Welcome here. Lisa is a manifester. She lives in California. She has a background in medical, and she's also a gifted psychic medium. And I know because I helped shepherd her through her recent certification program with the Lisa Williams School. So Lisa and I met because I was her assigned master teacher while she was going through this program. And I have referred a lot of people to Lisa. She is so gifted, so kind. The testimonials that come out from your sessions, Lisa, people just love you. They love working with you. And I think that medical background in nursing and your education, your intellect, your kind heart just put together this beautiful package of a healer, a modern healer. And so I want you to just share with people a little bit about you and your words, your background, while I get the Instagram folks hooked up.
Okay, sounds good. First of all, thank you so much. That was unexpected. I was like, let me take a moment to just receive all that beautiful goodness you just gave me. Again, my name is Lisa Gianini. I have divine intervention, right? I was brought to the Lisa Williams School. All the divine connections, and then coincidentally, not coincidentally, was paired up with Tiffany, and it's just been a continual, beautiful exploration of my healing, my training, my gifts, and seeing how it is all tied together with my history in the medical profession. My journey in the medical world started almost, I say it out loud and it sort of freaks me out a little bit, but almost 30 years ago. I don't feel sometimes like that's possible, but that is the truth. It's been almost 30 years since I was a student nurse. I have, my undergrad and my graduate work is I've got a degree in a master's in science in the field of nursing, which if you're not familiar, if you just think of like, oh, doctors and nurses, but you don't really know what nursing is, it's often referred to as the art and the science of healing, because caring really is the theoretical framework behind nursing. We study all the things, biology, chemistry, anatomy, physiology, microbiology, sociology, psychology. We study all the things, people that go, pursue nursing as a profession. But we're also trained to deliver culturally competent, compassionate, empathetic care to our patients. And the extension of those patients are essentially people's families and their family members. So, I've been in the field for quite some time. I've practiced the majority of the time at a world-renowned medical center in the Los Angeles area. Recently, in the last 5 years, I have been slowly transitioning from the medical space into transformational work, which really arose from my own medical story, my own healing journey, and the reawakening of my own psychic and intuitive gifts that couldn't be ignored anymore. So it's really been a beautiful, beautiful journey for me. I've recently, just in actually preparing for this discussion today, I was thinking about some of the practice that I've had as a nurse, and what nurses do that patients and families might not realize what we're doing is part of our role is to look out for subtle changes that a patient might be experiencing, subtle changes in mood, behavior, condition. And it's our job to kind of go, oh, I'm noticing this. And how is that relating to what they're being treated for? So in preparing for this discussion, I actually was like, wow, unknowingly, nursing has actually been a bit of an intuitive teacher for me, because it's, a veteran nurse. And if there are any veteran nurses that are listening, you realize that you kind of have these antenna out, like these energetic antenna out, because you're always waiting to pick up those subtle changes. And, Tiffany herself, she's a, gifted spiritualist, an intuitive psychic medium, professional astrologer, all the things. I love to cheerlead for her. But as she knows, that intuitive and spiritual practice is really tuning in to a lot of the energies that are outside of the physical. So beautiful sort of aha moment. I actually had to kind of give thanks to the universe for, because really nursing has also been a bit of an intuitive teacher for me. So
I love that. I mean, you're absolutely right. Life is an intuitive teacher. Trauma is an intuitive teacher. I mean, your family is an intuitive teacher. I love that you brought that nursing is up. Okay, so before we transition, I think that I can hear some background, beautiful, angelic sound, and I forgot to ask you to turn it down. I don't think it's a problem, but it might be in the audio recording, so that's perfect. I want to transition and just let you guys know that today we're going to be talking about, of course, the medical moon with Lisa. And so we've got, she's going to teach us a little bit about Ayurveda. We're going to talk about her personal system and how we can track health with the moon. And then depending on time, I have a couple of other lunar tidbits that we could work with. So we've got the lunar cycle, working with your health with the lunar cycle. I have a background with medical astrology. So if anybody has elective surgery questions with working with the moon, I have a whole list, a checklist of things that we can be working with in terms of elective surgery. And then I have a cool thing about lunar water that we could play with. So that's our plan today. But it really all starts with Ayurveda. So I would love, Lisa, for you to teach a little 101 or basics about how Ayurveda is going to inform the rest of our discussion today.
Okay, so first I want to be full transparency. Full transparency. Ayurveda and Ayurvedic practice is not my zone of genius. Okay, that is not where my professional practice stems from. I was actually, it's an alternative medicine system with historic roots in the Indian subcontinent. And again, I came to start scratching the surface in Ayurveda, again, as part of my own health story. And at the time was looking and seeking more answers and more clarity for health and wellness outside of just the physical body and Western medicine, which is where my training is the majority of where most of it's at. So again, for anyone who is an Ayurvedic practitioner and they might be listening, whether today or later on, full transparency, that is not my professional zone of genius. But sure. And we really are just scratching the surface today. I mean, just barely scratching the surface. But the idea was to, and our goal, I think both of our goals here, is to really just present something to the average person out there that might be looking for some additional answers or a place to explore where they can monitor or track health and their own systems on their own. So Ayurveda, again, it translates, I don't know if that's the right word, but it goes back almost 5,000 years. It is considered one of the oldest healing sciences. And often, again, this might be known to some as the mother of all healing sciences. So it was developed by Indian sages, and the belief behind the practice is that health can be achieved by the balance of the mind, the body, and the spirit, which, in modern times, in modern medicine now, and even in the astrological weather that we're starting to experience with this whole age of Aquarius and everything that's happening, more and more people are starting to make the connection that our wellness really is derived from starting to connect the dots between the mind, the body, and the spirit. So that is why I love to just sort of bring Ayurvedics into this. And for what I want to kind of share today in terms of how I started making some of these little connections for myself is Ayurvedic medicine practice. It is based on doshas. And again, we're just scratching the surface. There's so much that you can get into, and we're not going to do that today. But the doshas in Ayurvedic practice are believed by practitioners that they are essentially made up of the 5 elements: fire, water, earth, air, and the ethers. Mm-hmm. And the existence of all of these things are in the physical, mm-hmm. but they are also not just in the physical planet, but they also make up our body and physical and mental characteristics. So it's just a very beautiful juxtaposition of things that people are out there, non-medical professionals, lay people, seekers of wellness and health, that they're starting to look for. And really, this goes back to this ancient, beautiful study. And if you follow or look up the history of Ayurvedic medicine, it started in India. We're talking maybe 5,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And essentially it traveled through China down to Indonesia. It traveled west over to Europe, over to Egypt, up into Europe. And essentially thousands of years ago, when people started trading herbs and medicine, this is how European medicine was born. And Western medicine, as we know it, stems from all of these places, which gives me chill bumps because I don't know, it just gets me excited. I just get excited talking about some of this stuff. So that's just a little bit about Ayurvedics. Mm-hmm. And so how does that tie into health and the moon? Mm-hmm. So again, out of the two of us, Tiffany is certainly the professional astrologer here. She is the professional astrologer. But I do love me some moon energy. People that might know me, that might be listening, I like to moonbathe. I like to follow the moon. I like to track the moon. I like to look up into the sky and see where she's at, see what phase she's in. And so Tiffany said, for all the moonies out there, I'm a moonie. Like, I'm dabbling now in astrology as well because I love learning about all the things. I'm a multi-passionate person when it comes to the mind, body, and the spiritual and how it's all interconnected. But again, the moon is no less energetic than the sun or water or electricity. The moon has its own energetic force. And in the spiritual world, as Tiffany knows, the moon's associated with our intuition, our emotions. In terms of the body, it's associated with the right side of the brain, the pituitary gland, and interestingly enough, the female reproductive organs. So this is my area of expertise in the medical world. Most of my career and my specialty is in women's health. Mm-hmm. So I have studied the menstrual cycle. We could do a complete talk on that alone. So again, if it starts to get a little bit medical in talking about the menstrual cycle today, this is my zone of genius. These are things that I understand. These are things that I know. And tying this into the energies of the world outside of our physical body, to me, is just absolutely fascinating. So there is this close relationship between the lunar cycle and how it might be regulating our emotions and the emotions that you might be experiencing mentally, obviously, but our emotions also play a huge part in our physical symptomology. So again, just this constant, beautiful ebb and flow and juxtaposition of all these things. That's the stuff that pumps me up, gets me super excited. Mm-hmm. So how does this connect? So the moon, she represents our the feminine energy, while the sun represents the masculine energy. So we're sticking with this feminine energy in the moon.
Yep.
And the moon renews herself, and I'm gonna call her how I like to call her. She renews herself every 28 days. It's no coincidence that the menstrual cycle is a 28-day cycle. And again, for anyone that might be in the perimenopausal state or menopausal state, whether it was surgically induced or through the natural course of biological events, again, this doesn't necessarily exclude you from being able to use the moon as a bit of a guide in monitoring some things. So, so going back to these doshas and how in Ayurvedic medicine, the doshas being made up of these 5 elements, they can also be associated, again, scratching the surface here, full transparency. Okay, that's not my, I'm not the 100% go-to person for Ayurvedic training. But scratching the surface, the doshas are also connected to seasons of the year, times of the day, and the menstrual cycle. So when I started discovering all this and seeing how all these pieces were intertwined, I thought, there's something to this. Okay, and why not? Why not track these dosha cycles with the menstrual cycle and start to see if there is a pattern? Is there a pattern to my mood? Is there a pattern to my emotions? Is there a pattern to physical symptoms that I might be experiencing? And so I started doing this. At least, I guess it's been 5 years. 5 years ago, I started doing this.
Okay.
And really, I was sort of, right? Flabbergasted at what I was starting to notice. And so, again, I think that and I don't mean to offend, but in my perspective, my opinion is I think that most of our culture here in the United States is really based on more of a masculine energy, the energy of the sun. It's like the sun cycles itself in a 24-hour period. Sun rises, sun sets, 24 hours. And it's like, okay, new day. Let's get up. Let's restart. Let's start all over again. And, clean slate, that day's gone. It's a new day. It's a fresh start. Well, as a biological woman and someone who is very much in tune with her femininity, that doesn't always work for me. Right. And I would hope that this is speaking to some of the women out there as well, that we function on a different cycle. Our body is not resetting itself every 24 hours. Even though science and society might want us to be resetting ourselves every 24 hours. That is often what I would say a bit of a conditioned response. But the natural flow, the natural rhythm of biological female, our rhythm is on a more of a 28-day cycle. We reset every 28 days if we look at it from the bigger picture. So when I started tracking these things and I started kind of paying attention, the 3 doshas in Ayurvedics, there's 3 of them: Vata, Kapha, and Pitta. And each one is associated with different stages of the menstrual cycle. And so I started to look at these things and I was like, okay, well, if each one of these doshas are sort of a different energy and they're associated with different parts of the menstrual cycle, which I know sort of inside and out, how can I honor each energetic cycle that I'm in throughout the month? And how is that potentially going to affect my wellness, my inner wellness, and therefore my physical wellness? So the Vata is representative of this sort of creative phase, vision, dreams run wild, and being inspired. You're getting this channeled wisdom. It's associated during the time of your menstrual cycle when you are menstruating. So days 1 through 5. And interestingly, when we look at the cycles of the moon, I'm going to start with the new moon. We'll start there. Okay. New moon. The new moon is associated, and again, Tiffany can chime in. Please chime in and piggyback on anything that I'm sharing in terms of the moon phases as an astrologer.
Yeah.
The new moon is new ideas, new ways of life, new actions you want to take. You're maybe pondering the word launch, and it's kind of like this bear coming out of hibernation. And if you think about when we're menstruating, right, hormones have dropped. Okay, it is the start. Okay, we're letting go of the old and getting ready to move into the new, which would be the next phase of the cycle, when we would move into ovulation and to start something new. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. You know, from astrology, you're doing great. Like, this is all for the medical moon. So this is perfect. And from an astrological perspective, right, you're looking at the new moon. It's a time of total darkness. There's no light in the sky. So the subconscious mind is being seeded with new ideas, new intentions. Jan Spiller's book, New Moon Astrology, is, to me, it's like why would anybody else write a book about new moon astrology? Because we've got that one. So if that topic interests you, check her work out for sure. But for sure, the new moon, there's a darkness going on. Subconscious ideas are coming forward. You're thinking about what is possible. And there's a couple of ways to look. Like, what Lisa's teaching today is going to be in that 28-day cycle. And I just want to make everybody aware that there's also a 2.5-year cycle that starts with each new moon based on the zodiac sign it's in. And so I'll save that chat for another time, which gives me just a moment to quickly do some housekeeping. So at Lisa Williams School, I'm teaching about the moon on February 10th, which is the Chinese Lunar New Year. And so I feel like this is I'm going to put that in the topic, in the chat for you guys. But February 10th, if you're interested in learning more about that, like 2.5-year cycle, or how you can work with your natal moon, and you're just kind of at this broader stage, what do eclipses mean for me? We can talk about that in a whole other class. But right now, everything you're saying is perfect, because this is the topic, the medical moon, right? So yeah, keep your flow.
Okay. So I just like to, I get a little excited about kind of jumping out of my seat at times. I get excited about it. But, when I was coming through my medical practice in my medical studies, when I say almost 30 years ago, you can do the math, but, people weren't talking about these things. And we didn't have these platforms to have these sorts of discussions with people that might have been in other places where we could kind of share. We didn't have the luxury of sharing these ideas in the same way. And in the medical space, people weren't really connecting these dots, in my experience. It wasn't really being introduced in training. So to see it now, and to be able to connect the dots, not just for myself, but to recognize that there's many practitioners out there starting to do this work. It just really gets me excited to see the interconnectedness of everything, because it truly is. We are mind, body, and spirit. So coming back to the doshas and the moon cycle, let's look at, once we get through those first 5 days, and again, just like Tiffany's saying, the phases of the moon, now roughly it's a 28-day cycle, but again, there's ebb and flow to the universe. For purposes of having a discussion, I like to sort of look at that breakdown as roughly, okay, it's not an exact science, but roughly, right? We go through the new moon phase, the new moon, and then it starts to wax, but essentially it's like 7 days. Okay, it starts to wax 7 days. So new moon, 7 days. It waxes for 7 days. We get into this full moon phase, 7 days, roughly. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then it starts to wane 7 days. So that's roughly a 28-day cycle. Mm-hmm. So once we've gone through the vata or creative or new moon phase of these energies, in Ayurvedics, the next stage is the kapha phase. So kapha is restorative. It is day 6 through 12. So the restorative phase is about restoring, okay, getting revved up, self-care, receiving. Your body is your temple. Everything is building up. You might be getting pushed a little bit outside your comfort zone. It's associated, again, this would be more of like that waxing moon phase. You're replenishing your strength, your vitality. Everything is starting to elevate. It's waxing because we're getting ready for that full moon, which we're in the energy of now. Yeah. Wow, this has been an interesting one too. And when you juxtapose that with the menstrual cycle, this is the follicular phase. So after menses, after you've shed the inner lining of the universe, okay, of your body, you're getting ready for that next phase. Everything is starting to get ready for the release of a new egg, ovulation. Okay, the body is building up. The hormones are increasing. Your estrogen levels are rising. This is the follicular phase, just like that waxing moon. We're getting ready to elevate. We're getting ready to replenish. We're getting ready to possibly produce new life. Pumps me up. Get excited. And so that's where, these are things in this stage, in Ayurvedics, it's also associated with winter, early spring, where things are wet, the ground is moist, the ground might still be heavy from the winter weather. This is where we want to stimulate our bodies, where we want to, eat spicy foods. We want to get things moving. In Ayurvedic practice, it's a good time to literally get things moving, like shake things out, get some exercise, go on a hike, get out in nature. It's the in-between. We want to honor the sacred pause. So this is a restorative phase. It's a good time in your health and your wellness, this 6 to 12 day window, where you maybe not want to be like going like a freight train. Or if you're noticing on your schedule of life, you have to, being mindful of taking pauses, honoring the pause, because energetically, this is more of a restorative phase. I'm just looking at, okay, because I know I get excited, I start talking. And the Italian girl in me, I'm a very kinetic person. So even when I'm doing readings and healings with people, I move around a lot. So you can see that even here. So we get to the last dosha, or the third dosha. This is, it's spelled Pitta. It's pronounced Pitta. It is the Pitta phase. So it actually includes days 13 to 15. So when we think of the menstrual cycle, again, the idea is around day 14 is when the body ovulates. So the Pitta phase in Ayurvedics actually includes ovulation, and then all the way through days 16 to 28. So it actually includes ovulation and all the way back to the almost to the next phase of the moon cycle. So again, ovulation, this is the peak of estrogen. It's the full moon, right? It's bold, it's bright, it's empowerment. The full moon is about achieving your goals. It's about procreating in your own life. And this is ovulation, procreation. It's physiologically, we're designed to procreate. And so this is, again, we reach this sort of peak, just like the moon. The full moon reaches its peak. And then this is a time we want to sort of stay cool, eat detoxifying foods, things that are going to sort of, it's a fire element. The Pitta phase is the fire element. So we want to kind of stay cool, eat these sort of fruits, green leafies, peppermint teas, things that are going to kind of keep us keep us a little bit grounded and cool during this sort of fiery phase. Mm-hmm. And then again, with the Pitta phase, it's the busy phase. It is when you are making your power moves, when in Ayurvedics, when you're going to get things done. You're going to handle it like you're the CEO of your life. You're co-creating with the universe. This is when you're getting your hustle on, and you're going to do that almost to the end through 28 days. But just before we reach that 28 days, the last part of this Ayurvedic cycle is also preparing for the wind down, the waning moon, okay? Surrendering to what is ending. It's getting ready to release the waning moon, right? When the waning moon comes, we are getting ready to release what is stagnant and decayed and no longer serves us before we begin anew, right? The body is getting ready to expel what is stagnant, and we don't need it anymore to procreate if we didn't procreate within that cycle. So it's sort of this lunar gift of letting go before we begin again. And in Ayurvedic medicine and in Ayurvedic practice, this is exactly what this cycle represents. So really, this Vata and Kapha and Pitta energies, they are just these beautiful mirrored images that come from this ancient practice that is directly correlated with the moon. And when we start tracking these things and paying attention and seeing where your mood is falling, mm-hmm. it gives us sort of this beautiful natural blueprint to make some adjustments mm-hmm. where we can. And this is where we can become empowered over our own health, our own wellness, and the things that we can do outside of Western medicine mm-hmm. to energize our life, empower our souls, heal our spirit, all the things. So let me just take a breath. I know.
Yeah.
I'm out there talking.
Take a breath. Have a glass of water. I think this is so amazing. You know, I love that you've been able to map this together. I know that I already hear people's questions in my conscious mind. And so I know that one of them is going to be with regards to the new moon cycle, right? So it's very clear and obvious to be able to see the new moon and the full moon. However, if somebody's cycle isn't aligned with the lunar cycle, do you have any ideas on how people could creatively work with the doshas? Or are you still working with the moon? Are you working with your personal chemistry? Like, do you have any ideas?
Okay, so yeah, and I knew I had a feeling these types of questions. So I'm glad that you asked that, because again, while science and Western medicine is science and evidence-based, right? It is structured to sort of be able to be studied, proven, to kind of have these sort of linear clinical results. But our bodies don't work that way.
Yeah,
the universe doesn't work that way. And again, even in my own practice, with tracking these cycles, it doesn't always align. This is when we are aligned with the lunar cycles, you will actually start to notice the overlap, but it doesn't always align. Mm-hmm. However, to answer your question, how can we do that? I mean, I kind of refer back to the moon. Mm-hmm. I refer back to the moon because the moon, we can see what phase it's in, right? And then this is also how someone that's either perimenopausal, which means their cycle may not be 28 days anymore. Many mm-hmm. people's cycles aren't 28 days. Mm-hmm. There's a myriad of medical conditions and medical, things going on that can have someone's cycle completely outside of, and that's 100%. Believe me, I'm just trying to kind of give us a very structured sort of guideline to go off of. But again, I refer back to the moon. if the moon is in the new moon phase, if the moon is in the Vata phase, if the universe cyclically is going through this creative new idea, new way of life, I default to the universe in that way, because that gives me the blueprint. Whereas if the body is sort of feeling out of control, the emotions are feeling out of control, you might feel like what? I have no control over this. You can use that as your blueprint to sort of help you to get more aligned.
Like re-templatize basically what's going on. Okay, amazing.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And in fact, somebody in the comments was like, that was my question. So maybe I heard you thinking, but that's perfect. Like, that's a great way to think about it. I mean, and there's no wrong answer here. You know, you're on your own experiment. We just have the ability to pick your brain. And I love hearing your answer and your response. I wasn't going to do this, but I do want to share my screen for a second. So if you guys are listening on the podcast later, I invite you to come over to my YouTube channel so you can see some of this, which right now is kind of a hot mess of a screen. But Lisa, can you see that?
I can see it, yes.
Okay, amazing. So if you are wondering what the phase of the moon is, or what sign the moon is in, or all of this stuff that we're talking about, right? I think you're giving me the idea, Lisa, that we need to add the doshas to the next version of the digital astrology calendar. But just so you know, I like, for example, this is my digital astrology calendar, and I've got any moon sign or phase or ingress or void of course period you can just click on and start learning about this moon. So for example, this is a first quarter moon at 20 degrees of Scorpio. It tells you what Lisa's talking about too. It's a turning point. It's a first quarter moon. We have energy. We're going forward with something. This represents the 2.5-year cycle I mentioned a little bit ago, but it has the Sabian symbol in there. It has different ways you can work with the different phases of the moon. And then when a moon changes signs, because we're talking about the medical moon, I just wanted to point out that there's also herbs and spices, there's dietary considerations, there's stuff to consider for if you're in the garden, there's astrology lessons and crystals and other things, but there's medical moon stuff in the calendar. So if you guys are new to my work, I want to invite you to check out the digital astrology calendar. And, you know, I think that it just goes really nicely with what you're talking about in terms of opposite and complementary medicine. If we're in a pitta stage, right, it's a fiery time, you may want to balance off with cooling foods, cucumbers, watermelons, watery things, leafy greens, all this stuff, mint tea, the stuff that Lisa mentioned. However, if you know your constitution and you're already like super watery and you just barely got a breath of life with the pitta phase, maybe you want to take that into consideration. So I have listed out some things here. So in Sagittarius moon, it's ruled by Jupiter. And so you might work with some Jupiter foods. And Jupiter and Sagittarius rule the hips, the liver. And so a lot of astrologers will work with the healthy fats like avocados, nuts, things like this during a Sagittarius moon. So I just wanted to add another little fun layer in to what you're saying and give you a second to have a glass of water.
Absolutely. Like I said, I just enjoy being in spaces where, you know, these conversations are being had. I really do.
Yeah, me too.
I really do, because again, I just, you know, once upon a time, I just thought, is no one talking about this? Is this stuff not
right? Right.
And then once I started to realize, oh, there are people out there making these connections. It's not just me. I mean, not that I was the enlightened one.
No, well, right, yeah.
But I just was not in spaces where people were having these conversations or making these connections. And for someone who came from like this, you know, world-renowned big medical space container and environment where I was working, I just was like scratching my head sometimes, going like, something's missing. You know, something is missing. And I digress for a moment, but I'm kind of getting this little download or this sort of vision where there would be times when I would be walking around the medical center where I spent many, many years, almost 20 at one particular medical center, or yeah, it was actually 20. And, highly intelligent people, very, impressive resumes of individuals that are practicing at this medical center. But something intuitively used to kind of hit me and knock me often where I'm like, there's something missing. Like there's something that we're not getting. And I never knew what that was. But for me, and again, I'm not going to undermine Western medicine. There is a time and a place and a for all of it.
Yes.
But for me, as an individual, I just felt like there is a component in this world that I was in, this medical world that I was in, that just wasn't congruent with what I felt was wellness. And I found that, again, stepping out and going back and looking at Eastern medicine, which has always been here, but looking at it and realizing it has a component in our wellness, our vitality, our health, our mind, our body, and our spirit. And even as a trained professional, in nursing, I can't speak for the medical doctors because it was not the professional training. I didn't go to medical school.
Right.
But in nursing, we are exposed to treating the patient or the client in front of us as a mind, body, and spirit. But again, it's almost like a discussion.
Yeah.
It's an introduction that, we treat all these things. But the reality of my experience is, the physical always takes precedence in our Western medical practice, the physical body, and often fixing or trying to fix what we see right in front of us, but not really getting down to the root, to really what's going on. And that is, again, where spirituality, intuition, energetic healing, and these Eastern medical practices like Ayurvedics and Chinese medicine, Ayurvedics is not the only one out there. It just happens to be, has historical roots and many might say is the basis for all these other modalities, these alternative medical modalities. So
yeah, absolutely. I want you to share a little bit too about the, I got to see a little screen, like we were doing a Zoom at some point last year, and you had your kind of moon tracker journal there. And so how can people take this and play with it? How can people really work with this? Like what are some step-by-step things if they're just trying to discover and experiment, what do they do? What did you do? How do they do it?
So the first thing I would say, if you were a menstruating female, so if you were still someone that is still having their menstrual cycle, sometimes it's what in the medical space, you go to the doctors, one of the first thing they ask women all the time, when was the last day of your menstrual period, right? It's almost like you're waiting for the question. Right. And sometimes I used to think, are they just asking that and really not being mindful of its relevance to why I'm here today? But they always ask. But if you are still menstruating a female, you definitely want to have that written down. So I am, I do a lot of things old school. I literally have my calendar written, not my digital calendar, my written calendar.
Yeah.
And I literally, on the first day of my menstrual cycle, so there you go. I don't know whenever someone might be watching this later, but I'm still menstruating female. Write down when day one is. Okay. Some people don't know. I mean, I would have patients that I would see in the past when they're like, oh, I don't know. Like you want to know when that is. So, and then here is the other thing when people, which I have to remind myself, many people don't realize the menstrual cycle, day one is the first day of menses. It's not when you stop menstruating. That is not day one. Day one is the first day that you're spotting, you're seeing what's coming out. That's day one. So you want to write that down. Now, so again, what's today? Today's the 26th. So hypothetically, if today were your day one, you would mark it down. And then with the Ayurvedic doshas, that would be day 1 of your Vata phase. Mm-hmm. And you could count out 5 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Vata, 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 Vata. Mm-hmm. So you kind of know you have this window of time and understanding where you can start to realize energetically, cyclically, I am in a creative phase. My body is in a creative wave. This is when I might be noticing I'm feeling inspired. I might be noticing I'm getting sort of this visions and these new ideas, new ways of that are new things that are coming up. So writing that down and then just being mindful of what you're experiencing during that time. And again, after the 5 days, and again, if you're an individual that were menstruating beyond 5 days, that's fine. Energetically, the doshas say, okay, so now days 6 through 12, I'm going to be in a restorative phase. Okay. I'm replenishing. I'm getting ready. Everything's going to be, we're gathering the energy to restore. So we want to incorporate these practices in this cycle. So even if one is still shedding their endometrium, try to be okay. So someone is still shedding their endometrium past day 5, energetically with the Ayurvedic doshas, you're still moving into the Kapha phase. Okay, just like the moon, right? Mm-hmm. We look at the sky, we see it gradually changing. We see what's happening. It's not exact. It's not like, it's not precise. So then you can kind of count out 6 through 12. This is my restorative phase. This is this phase when I should be honoring a different energy that could be going on in my body. Mm-hmm. And then look at that. And then we get to, again, day 13 to 15. That would be roughly ovulation. Again, some people know when they ovulate, if they're still an ovulating woman, right? You can actually feel it at times. If you really are tuned in, many people can actually recognize when they ovulate. And we usually, again, this is like perfect scenario. Every month we ovulate 1 month on the right, 1 month on the left. Say that in it, right? So you actually might notice the symptoms, but again, ovulation is the sign or the beginning of the Pitta phase. Day 13 to 15, and then 16 to 28, this is all Pitta. The later we get into the Pitta phase, the farther along, it's just being mindful, right? If you can see on your calendar, I'm coming to the end of these 2 weeks, you're getting ready to wind down, to begin anew. The body is going to be shedding what it doesn't need. We're going to be shedding what didn't come to fruition. So again, I literally write it down. And if someone keeps a digital tracker for their cycle, mm-hmm. just like your calendar, right? The new moon, that would be days 1 through 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Vata phase. 6 through 12, Kapha phase. So I did it old school because I like to see things that way. Yeah. In that way, pulling it up on a digital calendar, it kind of like my wiring, my inner being, it's like, it actually frazzles me. I have to kind of still be able to see things the old school way. But I have noticed over time, and again, it doesn't stay the same because our body, life, hormones, what we eat, every stage we're going through, every age, different ages, all these things come into play. But what it has done is it's allowed me to be more aware and more mindful of symptoms, moods, emotions that I might be going through, because I can look at that calendar, right? And I go, wow, I'm in my Kapha phase. And it actually, if I'm mindful of what's going on with the moon, often I do find that it's aligning. It's really been, I mean, it doesn't always, but if I go back over time, I've been doing this for 5 years, you'd be surprised at how often it does. And again, for someone that's maybe perimenopausal or in a menopausal phase, you are not excluded. You are not excluded from this, because all that means, it's the pause of menses. It just means we are no longer menstruating. We're no longer producing certain hormones to procreate life.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that we don't still have moods, emotions, other hormones going on, other, cycles, both mental, spiritual, and physical going on in our bodies. And the moon just might be that beautiful map to help guide you through some of your symptoms.
Do you have any? I'm putting in the chat a couple of books that I recommend for hormones. And do you have any resources? Oh man, this is a big link. Sorry, guys. I'll just say it. So it's called Hormone Intelligence, and it's from Aviva Ram. And so there was, I have a herbalist that I work with in Dripping Springs, Beth Ebbing with Sacred Moon Herbs, and she recommended this book. So I immediately got it, and I feel like she's one of the big players in hormone intelligence, as her book says. And of course, I love Rosemary Gladstar is my herbal teacher, and she has a ton of books on not just women's but also men's health when it comes to hormone balancing. And I'm bringing up hormones because we're talking about hormones in relation to the moon. And so those are two resources that I could offer. Are there any that come to mind for you as well?
You have me stumped. I actually don't have those. I don't have anything like off the top of my head at my fingertips.
Okay, no problem.
I just, and just to kind of, let's just kind of put that in there just for the sake of wellness and health out there. In the medical world, people have been talking about this in these alternative medicinal spaces for quite some time. But gut health and the microbiome of our gut is now being recognized in the scientific community as having a direct correlation to our mood, a direct correlation to hormones. They're starting to really look at these things. And recognizing that the American diet often can wreak havoc on the gut. And there are many people, naturopathic doctors. Again, my specialty was mostly in women's health, but there are naturopathic doctors, functional medical doctors. So again, I'm more familiar with the medical space because of my background, that have been incorporating herbs and different foods to also keep that in balance for hormone health. So that is where that ties into the resources that you're providing, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Because again, I come from my professional expertise is really more Western. And so for those of you that are people that have already been kind of playing and digging in the Eastern practices, absolutely. Those are great resources.
And what about the idea of the eating different seeds at different dosha periods? Are you familiar with that practice? We can say
it is part of Ayurvedics. I know that there are, when you start to get into really studying Ayurveda, all of the doshas, like I said, I kind of correlate it for today's talk with the moon and the lunar and menstrual cycle and how they sort of mirror and overlap one another. But the doshas also correlate with the seasons and times of day. Okay. And again, different foods that you're going to be eating or incorporating to keep things in balance. So Ayurvedics is trying to keep those earth elements, fire, water, earth, air, and the ethers in balance. The human body, homeostasis, that's the word we use in the medical world. Homeostasis, the body is always trying to maintain equilibrium, balance. That's what it likes. So yes, to answer your question, there are different foods. There's dosha diets. You can be mindful of the time and when to switch different things off throughout the day and move to different foods. But again, that is an Ayurvedic practitioner. That is not my area of genius. Absolutely. When you start digging into Ayurvedics, all of these things are in there.
That's awesome. Well, I want to be mindful of our time. We're kind of at the top of the hour. If anybody has questions for Lisa, please let me know. And then, Lisa, is there anything that you wanted to just cap off the conversation with? Anything you wished I had asked or thinking about now?
I don't.
It's okay.
Yeah, not off the top of my head. I just want to say thank you. Like, I thank you for the invite. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for putting out your expertise with astrology and the medical moon, and starting to create platforms and a place and promote spaces where people can learn more about how the universe around us, the environment around us, including the stars, the moon, can play a factor on our health and our wellness. And you know what? Oh my gosh, I got to share it. Let me see if I can find it quickly. I know you know what I'm talking about as soon as I read this to you. It's just a quote that just popped up in the last couple of days, which I got super, I geeked out on, right? Is that a term? That's a Tiffany phrase.
Yes.
If you know Tiffany, she says, I get really geeked out on it. So I geeked out on this because, again, having this medical background, but being very multi-passionate about, intuitive work, spirituality, being a healer and intuitive medical medium, all the things. I saw this quote the other day, and I just think it's a beautiful place to kind of leave here, because we're talking about Western medicine too. We have calcium in our bones. You know exactly where I'm going now, don't you, Tiffany? Mm-hmm. We have calcium in our bones, iron in our veins, carbon in our souls, and nitrogen in our brains. We are 93% stardust, with souls made of flames. We are all just stars that have people names. And that is a quote by Nikita Gill. So I just got chills because I just thought, there's a perfect time to share that. And I just happened to have saved it because it really got me excited when I saw that the other day.
Oh yeah, it is like my favorite quote for medical astrology for sure. It's so poignant, so real, so poetic. This has been so lovely. Getting some good comments. People are saying thank you to you, Lisa, and they're so glad that they could be here live. So whether you're listening now or later, if you want to work with Lisa, right, you can go to her Instagram, which is Lisa G. Life is Good. And you can send her a DM and she will schedule with you. So she's very, she's going to be able to be your perfect resource for healing, for medical stuff, for psychic work, for mediumship. Having her whole expertise together and doing the sessions that she does. I mean, like I said, I've been working with you, Lisa, for a little over a year, 2 years almost. And so I just can't recommend your work enough. And so I hope that you guys take advantage of working with Lisa. And I want to throw a little housekeeping out there for myself as well. I am teaching on February 2nd for my membership. I'm teaching a moon mapping class. And if you're not part of my membership, you can drop in. It's super reasonable. I think it's $22. And so this moon mapping class, it really plays nicely with what we just learned from Lisa's workshop today. So I'm going through all of the new moons of 2024, and we're working with each of the new moons and how you can activate some of this for your personal health, for your wishes, your intentions, and doing a personalized moon map for everybody that comes. And so again, free for my members, $22 for non-members. It's a 2-hour workshop. And you'll get to pick my brain live, of course. And the other one, there's 2 more I wanted to promote, is on February 10th. I'm doing a Working with the Moon at Lisa Williams School. And so if you are new to working with the moon, this is a great primer. It's a 4-hour workshop. And then last but not least, let's see. I've got the astrology calendar I wanted to promote. So the astrology calendar, it has all of the planetary movements and all of the lunar movements. And so if you're brand new, this is a great way to start to learn the language of the stars and the moon. And so I just thank you so much again, Lisa, for being here. I love learning from you. I love this topic. I hope that people get something out of it. And if they get anything, it's to start experimenting with looking up at the sky and then bringing that down to earth and making it all very personal, bridging I don't want to say gap, making a bridge between heaven and earth is essentially what we're trying to do here with this conversation. So love you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope, and again, I've been able to start to explore astrology more and more with Tiffany. She's actually, you know, the things that give me the goosebumps, the chills, like the things I get excited about with the moon and astrology. She's actually kind of been a mentor for me moving forward with how to piece more of astrology into my life for my own health and my own wellness. She has been studying the stars as long as I have been studying medicine. So it's just been this beautiful explosion of energy to be able to connect with her, learn from her, share ideas. Thank you for making these connections for, you know, the community at large, for your own community, for the people through Lisa Williams, all the places. It just gets me really excited. And I'm just very grateful to be in your circle and to be learning from you and sharing with you and sharing ideas. So thank you so much for having me here. Gratitude, really.
Of course. Well, this has been awesome, Lisa. So thanks, guys, for coming, and we'll have you back. We'll have you back soon. And namaste.
Okay.